Okay, I want to shift gears. We're going to come back to this, I think, a little bit shortly, in a little bit. But I want to
Sure.
shift gears. For now, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the, I guess, some of the, um, a little bit about the labyrinth that you need to negotiate in the space that you're in. Right. I think the last time that you and I chatted, we were talking about the regulatory scene, and I guess the way I look at it, like if I'm, if I'm developing a therapy for a rare disease, I'm developing a therapy maybe for an oncological indication. I think I can kind of expect what to expect from the regulatory agencies. And I think the last time we talked, you were talking a little bit about how that's a little bit different. Like the game's a little bit different in the obesity space when it comes to developing a regulatory
Mhm.
plan. So tell me a little bit about that. I mean, is it considerably different from, when you were working solely in immuno-oncology? Now you're in this space where there are many applications for, we'll just call it at its dumb, simplest form, weight loss, right? There are many applications, many approaches, many avenues, whether that's, a biologic or an over-the-counter drug. It changes the regulatory paradigm a bit, no?
Yeah, I think that the obesity treatment regulatory landscape, I mean, it hasn't really changed in the last decade or more, right? The bar for FDA approval is showing at least 5% weight loss, sustainable weight loss over a year, and that's where the kind of the approval pathway is. So unlike other diseases where there's a different bar where you're usually doing a comparison against an active. Here, the comparison has been against placebo and showing at least a 5%. So it's different than oncology or other rare diseases in terms of the bar, right? But one of the most significant concerns is the potential for neuropsychiatric side effects, which has been a critical issue for the development of CB1 inhibitors. So just to kind of for the audience understanding, there's a historical context here where the development of first generation CB1 inhibitors, such as rimonabant, which was developed by Sanofi, it didn't get approved by the FDA. It got approved in Europe, and it was for actually halted due to severe neuropsychiatric side effects. So that included depression and anxiety, and even the case of suicide ideation.
Mm.
And those adverse effects were primarily linked to central inhibition of CB1 receptors in the brain, which ultimately plays a significant role in mood and emotional processing, mood regulation and emotional processing.
Yeah.
So there has been this regulatory scrutiny, and because of that, I think that regulatory scrutiny around CB1 inhibition is actually spilled over to everything that's happening in obesity, because even the incretin class is driving a central mediated kind of response.
Hmm.
So there is a heightened focus on ensuring that any new therapies don't pose similar risks. And I think over the last couple of weeks, there was even been some headlines about the case of GLP-1s potentially being linked to this mood regulation and in some cases depression. So I think this means that the regulatory pathway for drugs like we're developing, like nimacimab, is likely to be more stringent, right? Requiring a very robust data to demonstrate the peripheral inhibition strategy
Hmm.
effectively avoids these central side effects. And this is where Skye and our drug is really differentiated, because we've shown through multiple preclinical studies that our drug doesn't cross into the blood-brain barrier, and it stays only in the periphery. And the small molecule CB1 inhibitors, don't have such exquisite restriction. So when you're looking at it, kind of in contrast to other regulatory pathways for other diseases like oncology, the risk-benefit ratio is sometimes a bit more straightforward, because you're dealing with a condition where it's life-threatening, and
Yeah.
they may be willing to accept significant side effects for potential survival, and which then lead to a different regulatory approach. And in rare diseases, that could also be, a different shift in risk tolerance. I think for this kind of situation, or it's a chronic condition, it's not necessarily fatal, but you want to have this long-term improvement, long-term prevention. The FDA is going to be looking at that from a mood regulation standpoint.
Yeah. This peripheral inhibition, the feature of your therapy that doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. Is this a result of was it luck, or is this by design?
No, that's by design. It's actually a stable antibody. It has a half-life of 18 to 21 days. And being a large molecule, that is by design what's absolutely kind of the differentiated approach that we're taking. So we're a kind of what we define as a first-in-class peripherally restricted CB1 inhibiting antibody that's highly specific for CB1 receptor. So it binds in a unique way, what's referred to as allosterically to the receptor. It inhibits the CB1 signaling, independent of binding to any other endocannabinoids. And it not only functions as an antagonist, but it also functions as an inverse agonist. So it signals the contrary to a CB1 agonist. So it means that it can reduce CB1 activity and also kind of reverses the signaling that's required to drive that response that we're looking for in this mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. I generally tend to try to steer away from very process and manufacturing conversation on the podcast, but I am curious because the last time we talked, you talked a little bit about sort of a concerted effort right now at Skye Bioscience around developing CMC and getting to the point where you're clinical ready to put this in humans. So tell me a little bit about that. Like, how has the technology matured? You talked about, previous iterations of CB1 inhibition being problematic. What have you done? How have you matured the technology to the point now where you're building, chemistry, manufacturing, and controls and putting this thing into, actual, I guess, process practice?
Yeah. So first of all, we've just started the trial. So our drug product is finalized. It's being utilized in a clinical trial, and patients are going to be taking our drug. So our CMC is robust, and we have drug product. I think where we're headed now is how do we continue to scale that? So yes, like you identified, CMC, having a robust kind of CMC framework is important for ultimately transitioning nimacimab from clinical development to commercial scale. And that's what we're currently working on. So we have a 2-year plan here to advance what we're doing right now in terms of manufacturing scale to get to commercial scale. And we kind of recently outlined that, and that's moving in parallel with our clinical development. So I think we're good in terms of drug substance formulation development. The next real big step up is the manufacturing scale up. So in antibody development, you want to continue to optimize production of the antibody, and then we need to ensure we have the CDMOs in place to continue to meet the requirements. So in the condition of obesity being such a large market opportunity, I think we're really interested in having the eventual commercial distribution scale to be able to treat this large population. The other side of that's attractive for us is that there's going to be opportunities for optimization in our formulation. So in the current trial, we're using a 200 milligram dose. As a weekly injection. The ideal product profile can move towards a monthly dose or even a quarterly dose, and that might mean that we're going to go to a higher concentration. So those are kind of happening in parallel. The other side of it is also the delivery. We're using a auto injector, so that's the ultimate form factor that patients would utilize the drug.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, we could spend a lot of time talking about that. Like you look at this great big giant market, you talk about auto injectors and sort of the patient experience. Like at what point, this is just as an aside, I'm curious about it. At what point in sort of the development of the company, and since you've been there, did that really become an important focal point for you, for company leadership to say like, this has got to be something that the patients embrace. The patient experience has to be, it's got to be where, it's got to be something that they're going to embrace and accept if we're going
Yeah.
to make the impact that we want to make.
Oh, right away. I mean, look, when we decided to move this into development, we already recognized that, look, that injection is already competing against oral. Both have their pros and cons. I think with orals, patients are having to kind of contend with compliance and remembering to take a drug every day. And with injection, there's always the age-old, oh, I don't, want to get pricked by a needle. So we have been focused on this from day one. Currently, one of the reasons we've been able to move quickly is we acquired Bird Rock Bio with drug product, and it was already in pre-filled syringes in a safe injection unit. So
Mm.
it's a unique kind of a novel approach to injection. It's not the auto injector, but it's just right like a kind of a precursor to auto injector, which is just a safe injection unit. And then we move, and then as we've been kind of moving in parallel with getting our phase two off the ground, we've also been moving forward on having the next drug product come online. The next drug product will have a pre-filled syringe with an auto injector unit. And that's been a kind of parallel process that we've been working on. And then we're already kind of have our eyes set on, okay, what's next after that? I mean, it may not be required for commercial because there's a regulatory consideration here, but perhaps post commercialization, there is also auto injectors with some future kind of technology or smart technology that can be integrated. So those are considerations that we're already thinking about, and thankfully, with the capital that we have, we've been able to make those necessary investments from day one, so that we don't lose any time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I know I'm bouncing around a lot here,
Yeah,
but like I'm just seeing these great segues into other
yeah, no
questions
problem.
I have for you. But around that patient experience and where you're taking delivery of the therapy down the road, that's closely related to patient acceptance is healthcare provider acceptance and payer acceptance, and this is a sort of a I don't want to say murky, but it's not well trod. It's not a well trodden path, right? In
Yeah,
obesity. So,
yeah,
so
you totally want to make it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
no, you know
I
where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. Like, you're in a therapeutic area where you want to make it very easy for the patient to take pharmacotherapy and and have the desired effects with safely, and to drive the efficacy. And that's where I think that this is a very attractive in terms of a product profile that gets to a monthly dosing, or even a quarterly dosing. Um, so that's the opportunity here, is that compliance would make it easier. Patients are going to be more accepting of taking it because they don't have to kind of be worried about taking it daily and forget, and you still get the efficacy out of it. So we're lucky here with a product profile that has a very favorable PK/PD relationship and a very strong half-life, and we're continuing to look at ways where we can optimize that, where we can make this easier, amenable pharmacotherapy for life for patients.
Hmm. What about the payer landscape? What's your take on that in terms of the space in general and where maybe what you'd like to see change or get smoother as you guys approach commercial?
Yeah, I think the key winning factors for us, Matt, is that really like you got to show clinically meaningful weight loss. We got to continue to show limited adverse events and have convenient dosing that has a long-term usage. And then along with clinically meaningful weight loss, if you can have lean muscle preservation, and if you keep patients on drug longer, then you can also address comorbidities. So those are at the broad level are the kind of winning factors, and I think that's what payers want to see as well. So the way we look at the path to success for us is that CB1 blockade will become a monotherapy approved, and it's going to be very additive to the incretin approach. And we believe that in the anti-obesity medication landscape, that the GLP-1 drugs will be widely available, and there'll be probably price compression based on the wide availability of GLP-1 drugs because of patent life, because of just so many companies that are focused on developing GLP-1 drugs and the dominant players advancing their pipeline. So insurance is probably going to cover that, and that price is going to be an acceptable price point. There'll probably be a step through because insurance would be like, hey, that's all we can manage. And then you have the additional kind of second line therapy that would be like a CB1. And in some cases, CB1 gets applied with GLP-1 because that's an attractive price point. But we don't expect that the price would be higher than what patients are paying right now. And that price seems to be becoming more competitive.
Yeah. How are you doing on time, Puneet? You got time for a couple more?
Yeah. I'm good. I blocked off the time for you.
All right, good deal. I appreciate that. Yeah, because I feel like we could talk for another hour. Right? We don't have another hour, but we'll try to
Okay.
try to wrap it up.
I don't know if your audience is going to handle that.